Good afternoon, Jake. Look, thank you very much for taking part in the Business Spotlight series. I will hand over to you right away to introduce yourself and what you do.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Ed. So I am the CEO and founder of two companies. One company is Rubiks Tech, which is known as an ISO in the online payment space. Effectively, we resell online payments, including Visa, MasterCard, and multiple other alternative payment methods, along with Mozarto, which we were recently funded by the UK Innovation Grant Scheme to build some specific payments orchestration software in order to enable SMEs to integrate multiple payment methods without the need for direct integration.
Okay, excellent. And so tell me a bit more about that. What are the actual benefits of it? Why would somebody use it?
Yeah, sure. So for Mozarto, the sort of use case is any company, an online business that wishes to work in multiple jurisdictions. Typically speaking, they will need to have multiple local payment partners. So we in the UK, for example, are very familiar with paying with Visa, MasterCard, maybe our American Express card, or even some of the sort of buy now, pay later companies. But in the EU, this is not the same. So as an example, in Italy, there's a lot of cash on delivery, which involves operating or working with a separate payment partner, along with perhaps in Germany, you want to make a direct bank transfer, as credit cards are typically not as widely adopted or used in some of those sort of German markets or Northern European markets. So what Mozarto does is that we can enable multiple banking partners, provide you with a front-end solution in order to host this, whilst also providing a back-end way of integrating things seamlessly without any development work. So we save sort of on the overall development costs of integrating new payment methods.
Okay, yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I guess sounds like obviously you know well the different nuances of each different market, and you can give advice on that as well, rather than someone having to try and find out, oh, hang on, I should have taken cash for this delivery. Or
I think, well, yeah, going back to that, and maybe I should have done a better job in my introduction. I've been in the payment space for 9 years, working for some of the world's sort of largest sort of payments companies. But yeah, I've built up, it's almost going on a decade now of experience in the payment space. So very familiar with the sort of use cases of multiple different verticals, but then also the requirements of online businesses and what's required in order to have the most success in the markets that they enter.
And are there specific sectors or sort of types or sizes of businesses that use the products the most?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's also something which is certainly worth pointing out. So sector by sector, it differs a lot as well. So or vertical by vertical. So as an example, a travel company, somebody like a booking.com, somebody like British Airways, typically speaking, 90% of all of their business will all be people booking on a credit card, for the pure reason that there's that added level of protection that they'll be able to make a chargeback, or the liability doesn't necessarily immediately sit with the customer. Whereas if you're working in an industry such as online gambling, there isn't the requirement or the risk, shall we say, that's on the merchant. It needs to be an instant, seamless transaction from the customer's bank account directly to the merchant to enable them to start basically playing with their money immediately. So there's two very different use cases, and then also use case to use case, payment method to payment method. There are differences and requirements for each of the online merchants when they are sort of operating in the markets that they choose to operate in.
And so obviously you provide the software and the ability to do this. Do you also provide, I suppose, an element of consultancy and advice about what people should do, or?
Yeah, I think so. So both my businesses, obviously with Rubiks Tech and then also Mozarto. Rubiks Tech, I used to provide some sort of consultancy services, but really have sort of stopped that altogether. Naturally speaking, when you are having sales calls or when you are speaking with the online merchants themselves, typically speaking, the sales process anyway is anything from sort of 3 to even 12 months, particularly for sort of larger merchants who have lots of moving pieces internally as well as externally. So naturally speaking, you would sort of almost have to be very consultative. So there are many things to consider and typically multiple questions that need to be answered before you sort of go live with any of these products. It's almost a case of trying to qualify yourself out as opposed to in a lot of the time to make sure that the product specifically fits the merchant's requirements and the merchant's needs. Unfortunately, it's not a case of black and white and being able to provide, you know, the same service to everybody, as I alluded to a few minutes ago.
Yeah, that's interesting. And what was the impact of COVID on the business?
COVID, this will seem fairly unpolitically correct to me, but COVID, dare I say, was good. So Rubiks Tech started literally month one of the coronavirus pandemic, certainly in the UK. So as we're an online business, a lot of the customers that we're speaking to, typically speaking, were working at home anyway. So there wasn't sort of the requirement or need to sort of travel anywhere. But then there's also a lot of sort of benefits that we've had as a UK business, particularly sort of setting up, incorporating businesses, you know, setting up bank accounts. The business environment in the UK is a lot easier than sort of other sort of markets where, you know, face-to-face, you know, bank account opening, you know, incorporating companies, you know, notary offices, etc. All of these things that are typically required in order to run a business. The business environment in the UK is very favorable, particularly for online businesses, and also a reason why the UK is still per capita the leading online e-commerce market. So I think that says a lot about us as a nation and as a country.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting to think about as well. And what do you think the future looks like for your businesses?
Yeah, I think certainly in my space, in the online payment space, it's created a lot of noise for the last 5, 6, 7 years. One thing that for me has been very exciting, particularly to be in that sort of financial technology space and certainly the online space in general. There are a lot of people and a lot of different payment options that have appeared in the last 10 years, notably people like buy now, pay later, enabling you to purchase things directly from a mobile app whilst providing you credit, basically creating this modern experience of a credit card. There's also been the emergence of cryptocurrency, where you're able to digitally exchange wallet to wallet without a traditional model where somebody's sort of in between that, facilitating or providing that service. So there's been a lot of changes that have existed in the space. The reality is, though, because a lot of people ask me this question, the reality is that moving forward, there will always be preference. So you as a customer, and I'm speaking to everyone that's sort of listening to this now, will always have a preference as to how they pay. So if you want to pay with your Visa and MasterCard, the merchants, in order to keep you or have you as a customer, will need to enable Visa and MasterCard. Those customers that wish to pay with a cryptocurrency, maybe they wish to pay with PayPal, perhaps, you know, a cash on delivery, they will shop in places where they can be accepted. So it's almost the merchant's job to provide the best services possible in order to cater to as many customers as possible. So the future looks great for you as a customer, but obviously for the merchants, it involves a lot of challenges sort of moving forward, whether that's popular or not. with the merchants, you know, and obviously goes back to the reason why we've developed Mozarto, as to the reason why you want to accept as many payment options as possible. So there's a lot of things to think about. General trends for the next sort of 5 to 10 years will be more of the same. So I think it's safe to say that certainly since the pandemic, which has sped this up, our world will continue to exist more online than it does in a physical sense. And then also the payment methods that we continue to use will be adopting and changing to the consumer behavior and habits of the individuals, particularly with credit financing, particularly from individuals that wish to use or pay from mobile devices as well. So those general trends, shall we say, will continue to rise.
Yeah, I think important for companies to make it as easy as possible for people to do business with them, which is not always a given, is it?
I think this is something that unfortunately is not spoken about enough. You know, there's a lot of people out there that go, hey, look, we've got this, we've got that. And you go onto their website and they may have, you know, Apple Pay and all these amazing things. They may have a fantastic marketing and affiliate team. But like you said, that user interface or that user experience sometimes becomes a little bit clunky because they've tried to include too much. I think a good example of this is, you know, some of the ride-hailing apps. The most successful ones are usually the ones that have the best user interface. It has very little to do with the actual sort of product itself, because the product is so similar. You know, there's only one Toyota Prius typically, right? That's probably going to pick you up. So yeah, ensuring that experience is seamless as possible and as easy to use. Again, you know, the success of Amazon isn't necessarily down to its price point. The success of Amazon is really down to that fantastic user experience, user interface, and everything that it brings together to produce that product. So yeah, the online space, and like you said, the UI UX is most important.
And then, so look, it sounds like you like to reflect a lot. What's been your biggest learning as a business owner?
Oh crikey. There's been a lot of mistakes, good and bad. I think as first selling for Rubiks Tech, which has been my first business, I think it comes down to cash flow. And it sounds so stereotypical, right? Because you Google, you know, what's the, for an SME, what is it? It is cash flow, because in the beginning, or certainly when we first started, there was nothing. You know, there was no cash flow to start with anyway, right? And then also as things move on throughout the business, even after the first year of business, if you're too reliant on, you know, one part, you know, generating revenue, if that revenue is then lost for whatever reason, it makes operating so much hard. So a very stereotypical answer for an SME or for a business, certainly the size of mine. But yeah, that would probably be the biggest challenge, I think, for most of us in this sort of SME space, basically.
Thank you. And then similar, slightly different question. What advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Don't go to university. So I went for a year, having really very little interest in it. I went for a bit of a party, and I certainly did that. We managed to achieve that. But yeah, I mean, as an 18-year-old, I had not the best understanding of what it was that I wanted to do, which I think is a much larger percentage of people than a lot of people would admit.
Sure.
And so yeah, that's what I would say. And I'd also say lay off the booze a bit. That's the very honest answer, I think. That's
very honest, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a little bit more of this, a little bit less of this, and yeah, a little bit more getting out of bed at a sensible time without a hangover.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Good advice. Yeah.
Who wanted
Um,
that answer? But there we go.
that was good. Honesty is good. Honesty is good. So, and then like on a different note, what would you say is what's inspiring to you?
I'm again, this will sound really stereotypical, but yeah, no, I love being inspired by by sort of other people who have been there, seen there, done it. So particularly sort of, other business owners, whether it be, a Warren Buffett type, a Charlie Munger type, or, a Steve Jobs, all of these sort of people that have achieved success. How can you not be inspired by it? And it's not just sort of one source that I look at. You and I, before this call kicked off, we were obviously talking about sort of sports. How can you not be inspired by watching Lionel Messi lift the most recent sort of World Cup? I mean, all of this is, there's a lot more to it than just sort of winning. And when you really look at sort of what a lot of these people have gone through to get to, that stage or that point in their life, I find that incredibly inspiring. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Then like one last thing, is there any news or any sort of offer that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, so we are starting to or the development work for Mozarto, which is being part funded by the UK Innovation Grant Scheme, is well ahead. We expect to really start making a big marketing push for this in the next sort of 3 to 4 months, with a go live date end of Q2, start of Q3. So around that sort of passage of time, which I'm being told by my CTO is going to happen, but you know how this works sometimes. So yeah, no, it's next. That's sort of my next sort of 6 months, if you like. And once we're ready, we would obviously love to speak to all the online businesses out there who are looking to enable multiple payment methods and work in multiple different countries globally.
Perfect. Great. We'll look forward to watch this space and look forward to developments in the next few quarters. And
it is a watch this space moment. Yeah,
definitely. Great. Well, look, thank you very much for taking part, Jake. Great to find out more. And it's something different. That's always good.
Pleasure. Thanks, Ed. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks.